Are the Chicago White Sox actually going to trade Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert Jr.? How about what can they get for guys like Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham? Let's get a national perspective next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the side expert of Southside Showdown, part of the FanSided's network. You can check out my written content at SouthsideShowdown.com, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Now, there are so many trade rumors swirling around the Chicago White Sox since this season has been so awful. And the team must rebuild through the team's pitching prospects, but most importantly, they got to replenish their farm system's bats. That is one of the many reasons the team might trade their two best players in Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert Jr., despite having a few years of club control. And there's some speculation as to what the Sox could get and not get for them. Sox fans might also be hoping for a nice return for veterans such as Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham to sort all of these rumors swirling around and get a preview of what to expect with the trade deadline. Co-host of FanSided's, the Baseball Insiders podcast, and FanSided MLB editorial director, Adam Weinrib. Adam, thanks for joining me, man.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, you mentioned a lot of reasons we should be paying attention to the Sox this month. That's one of my favorite things about the trade deadline. Teams that maybe national fans have left for dead in April, May, and June suddenly are in the catbird seat. And the White Sox, like you mentioned, you're rattling off those names. There is a lot of talent here.
Yeah, and I would love to be talking every day about a good team, but unfortunately, I chose the Chicago White Sox as my team. I should have done what you did and chose the Yankees. But anyways, we'll get to them in a little bit. Adam, are the White Sox going to trade Garrett Crochet despite him being a player the Sox drafted and now developed into an ace?
I think Crochet is unfortunately almost guaranteed to go. I mean, you look at this seller's market, and Robert Murray, my co-host, was very clear. I prodded him yesterday with a quote from David Cohn on the Sunday Night Baseball broadcast that indicated that this is A, going to be a seller's market, and B, is going to hurt for interested buyers. So with that in mind, Crochet is by far the best pitcher available at this potential deadline fire sale that any team has to offer. When you factor in years of control, talent, he's a couple of weeks away from being a White Sox representative at the All-Star game. So I would suspect the White Sox are going to hold him till that national showcase, maybe beef up interest even a little bit more after 48, 72 hours of Crochet doing press conferences, answering questions, selling himself to other fan bases. But what we heard over the weekend from Bob Nightingale, that the two sides did engage on a contract extension at some point. Crochet's team rebuffed the White Sox, and now they're in the initial offer gathering phase. I wouldn't anticipate that they move quickly here, especially given how many motivated buyers there are that need a pitcher. I mean, let's face it, a pitcher worse than Garrett Crochet, and therefore would pay an even higher price for a pitcher as talented as Garrett Crochet. But I do suspect that eventually he does get moved.
All right, so Bob Nightingale did report that the Sox have heard from 15 teams. Who are the teams that can realistically pull off a trade for Crochet, as it sounds like the White Sox are going to be asking a lot for him?
Yeah, there's a reason that the initial rumor mongering here all the way back to mid-June just fell to the Dodgers and Orioles, because I feel like, look, there's some natural dot connecting of just, hey, what are the two teams? The Dodgers are the most motivated buyer at every deadline. They've always had a top-tier farm system. This year, it's slightly lower tier than it has been. The headliners aren't quite as prestigious. I mean, you recall back to the Max Scherzer deadline when it was like Keibert Ruiz is blocked at the big league level, but also feels like a future all-star catcher. Yeah, he's going to be the headliner of a package. It's not quite so simple for the Dodgers this time around, but they've got the need. Clayton Kershaw just had a rehab setback. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is on the shelf. for the time being. We're not sure what the resolution is there. And Walker Buehler is injured as well and didn't look like himself before departing, coming back from Tommy John. So the Dodgers relying heavily on Landon Knack is not something I foresee continuing into October. The headliner, I think, in that instance would be someone like Josue DePaula, the teenage outfielder who's rocketing up prospect lists. Dalton Rushing is now the consensus number one Dodgers prospect for now, catcher, first baseman. And Diego Cartaya, the guy who's been blocked for a while by Will Smith, because all conversations about the Dodgers catching prospects have to start with the fact that they have a Major League All-Star there behind the plate for a few more years, at the very least. Cartaya's shine is off a little bit, so he probably wouldn't be the centerpiece of a Crochet deal, but the White Sox maybe could acquire him at the right time as a secondary piece in the package, though I know the Sox obviously like the catcher they got from the Angels last year, so catcher not necessarily a position of need. And then what the Dodgers farm system might lack these days, the Orioles farm system has in abundance. Unfortunately, Samuel Basallo, also a catcher, is probably the most likely Orioles prospect to be dangled, given that Adley Rutschman is also occupying that spot behind the plate for a while. But if you're looking for powerful offensive prospect pieces, the Orioles have them, whether it's Kobe Mayo, Connor Norby, even in the major league experience of Kyle Stowers, Heston Kjerstad, like take your pick. So given the Orioles' need for rotation stability and upside and the White Sox apparent desires for offensive prospects, I feel like that's a match waiting to happen unless AJ Preller and the Padres hop in and do something absurd. But I would put it down to the Dodgers and the Orioles right now.
All right. So what are you or your co-host Robert Murray hearing about Luis Robert Jr. possibly being traded?
Yeah, I'm going to keep asking Robert about this. And everyone, I hope we're going to do a lot of Baseball Insider shows before the deadline, Mondays and Thursdays live in the afternoons, and obviously listen on any podcast platforms afterwards. So I think Robert is going to be the number one most asked about name as we continue to do these shows. So far, from what Robert Murray has told me, it does seem like the reporting out there that the White Sox still need to be overwhelmed to move Robert is accurate. I don't think he's nearly as likely to be traded as Crochet. He keeps coming up in conversations. Jerry Dipoto and the Mariners, we talked about on yesterday's show. Dipoto is like, we're looking for meaningful offensive upgrades. And so I asked Robert, what do meaningful offensive upgrades look like? And he's like, I mean, Robert Jr., but I don't see it happening. Vlad Jr., but I don't see it happening. Like, I think these names at the really upper echelon, controllable all-stars are less available than maybe a guy like Crochet. And Robert Jr., I mean, you're selling at a relative low. I think all White Sox fans know how talented this player is, and so does anyone who watched the 2023 season. But you got the injury-prone label now. You've got potential being thrown around rather than production. So I feel like if I'm the Chicago White Sox, I hold and hope for a big second half and then hold an off-season bonanza there.
So you're saying that they're not going to get the Juan Soto package that the Nationals got from the Padres? Because that's kind of the asking price.
Yeah, and it should be. I mean, I think Robert is that level of player, but I don't know if this is the year, especially with so much else going on in the sellers market, so many rentals, so many bullpen pieces. It feels like a million years ago, the Luis Arraez changed hands. I feel like they're not going to get the bounty they're looking for, although every team should be aiming for the Juan Soto package because that's one of the greatest trades of all time with James Wood's debut this week. I mean, what a haul the Nationals got there.
Well, it was also a good package than what the Yankees gave to the Padres because the White Sox are now benefiting from Drew Thorpe. So thanks, man.
We'll get good baseball player. You don't often see a prospect of that pedigree traded twice in one offseason, do you?
No, you don't. But hey, I'll take them. Well, Adam is going to stick around for the entire show. So let's discuss what other sellers might be doing at the deadline that can impact what the Sox will get for assets next on Locked On White Sox. This episode of Locked On White Sox is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up and especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. On Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city. 4th of July weekend. Maybe you want a last-minute vacation down to Miami. Enjoy South Beach. Do a little deep-sea fishing. Then check out the Chicago White Sox. Have a chance to win some road games since they're playing the Miami Marlins, who have already quit on the season. Later this month, the Sox are going to Kansas City. Head out there, check out the Negro League Museum, get some barbecue, and check off visiting another rival stadium off your list. Using Booking.com to find a place to lay your head. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app. And the Chicago White Sox might be terrible this season, but it is still professional baseball being played at Guaranteed Rate Field. Paul Skeens is not likely to pitch next weekend at Guaranteed Rate Field, but Garrett Crochet is on July 12th. And there might not be only so many, he might not be only making so many starts for the Southsiders with all these trade rumors swirling. That is why if you want to take in a game, use the Gametime app. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They got zone deals, so save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the Sox play Game 2 of a road series against the Cleveland Guardians tonight. First pitch is at 5:40 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And the reason why I was talking so fast is I want to get to Adam Weinrib, my guest from Baseball Insiders podcast and the editorial MLB director of FanSided. Basically my boss, because I write for Southside Showdown. I'm the FanSide expert, although I've been slacking. I gotta get some more content on there, but Adam knows I've been busy with some other stuff. He's been very cool. He's like, you're a great boss, man. I really appreciate it in that.
Yeah, I guessed on more podcasts. People just say that. That's nice. Very nice.
Yeah. And also, where can we check out your guys' podcast with Robert Murray?
Well, if you aren't subscribed to the YouTube yet, I would love to see you there. Baseball Insiders. We also are on all podcast platforms. Again, Monday and Thursday, typically 3:30 Eastern live for about 35, 40 minutes with Robert Murray. We got a show planned every time we hop on the air, but we also are guided by fan questions. So we love our commenters. They always show up with a fire, and we respond. I get as much information as I can out of Robert in a short span of time. Look for an increase in shows potentially around the deadline, winter meetings. Robert will be on site at the All-Star game this year. Would love to have you there. It's a growing community. I know Robert loves it, and I love it too.
Hey, I just subscribed too, man. I realized I should have been subscribing the entire time. So one name I've heard that really could interfere with Garrett Crochet's market is Jack Flaherty of Detroit. Is he going to be the most sought after pitcher after Crochet, or who else is going to impact Crochet's market?
Yeah, I think he's number 2. And that's what's so funny about this market. I mean, I don't think if the Tigers really wanted to, they could throw a wrench in this entire thing and start shopping Tarek Skubal. But Robert doesn't see it happening. I don't see it happening. That feels like too large a white flag to wave, even though I think most agree the Tigers are not going to make much noise in the postseason race this year. But Skubal's in the midst of a Cy Young contending, if not winning season. Is getting challenged by Tanner Houck and Garrett Crochet a little bit, but he's probably the favorite in the clubhouse to win that right now at the midpoint. That would be the only name that could surpass Crochet in the pecking order. I would say Flaherty's a great option if you want a rental, but it's quite ridiculous that, I mean, look at where we are now. Who are the top 2 names on the trade market? A lefty converted reliever who probably was an afterthought after battling injuries the past few years, is now the consensus number 1 target. Number 2 is a veteran who most baseball fans are familiar with, who was a, Cardinals, highly touted Cardinal, backsliding Cardinal. The Orioles took a shot in the dark on Jack Flaherty last year, did not get the desired results, let him walk into free agency. I think a lot of us were surprised by the value of that contract when he went to Detroit. I think I was looking at single digits and went a little higher than that. Now, all of a sudden, he's become a hot commodity for the second half again. But I mean, number 2 target on the whole market for pitching, it seems like it, but it would have been somewhat ridiculous 2 or even 3 months ago to think about. The rest of the pitching market, relatively barren. I've got my eyes on Paul Blackburn of Oakland, but you have another, you could argue Eric Fedde is a top 3 starting pitching trade target, and the White Sox have 2 of the biggest chips left to be cashed in.
Yeah, I mean, Fetty's under team control for another year at $7.5 million. That was a great signing. You did say, they got the 2 biggest chips, but are there any sellers out there that are going to have more assets to trade than the Sox?
I think people should pay attention to. I like what's going on in Oakland, mostly because the A's are so. Look, I don't think it's a feather in their cap that they're this unpredictable, but team control, rental, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever. The Oakland A's seem willing to trade whatever talent they have with whatever level of control they have attached to them. So will they go as far as Mason Miller? Not so sure about that. That seems pretty tough to justify. But again, they're Oakland. So I can't sit here and predict how they're going to handle this deadline when I can't even predict where they're going to play next year with 100% certainty. Brent Rooker seems likely to go. Will they go as far as JJ Bleday, given the amount of control attached to him? I would say no today, but talk to me after the All-Star game. Blackburn, Miguel Andujar, Lucas Erceg in the bullpen is a favorite, a Baseball Insider's favorite. Robert and I always make sure to talk about him. The A's bullpen was overperforming, not just Mason Miller, for several months of the season. So I do think that the A's can rival the White Sox, but nobody can sell the starting pitching that the White Sox can.
So which bubble team between buyer or seller should the Sox hope stay buyers?
That's what you really have to worry about. I think it's a tough one again, though, because there are no bubble teams that I think could unload and change the pitching market. You've got the Mets situated around 500, right? I don't think Jose Quintana and David Peterson are necessarily, jumping the line and cutting the White Sox off at the head here. I think the teams that are looking to sell offense, like if the White Sox are dangling Luis Robert and all of a sudden a rental Pete Alonso shows up, I think that's scary. But the Pittsburgh Pirates, let's say, are floating in between. If they're sellers, they're not trading Keller, they're not trading Jones, they're not trading Skeens. Like Skubal and the Tigers, that's the only connection I can think that can really throw a wrench in Chicago's plans. But that really feels like 95-5 not going to happen.
All right. And how much does it stink to have the MLB draft before the deadline? Because all the prep that these teams are putting into the draft kind of really puts these moves on hold, where wouldn't it be better to kind of put the draft somewhere else? Because again, I'm a Sox fan. Let's get rid of these guys now. The later that Tommy Pham and Eric Fedde are on this team, the worse it is for the Sox.
Yeah, it stinks. And I'll give you another reason it stinks. Not only is it holding up the trade deadline after a whole offseason of the offseason being held up similarly. We're just waiting once again on this seller's market to develop. The draft on that Sunday is really, I know what they're trying to do with it, but for me, it's screwed up the rhythm of All-Star Weekend. For so many years, you used to be able to go Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, futures game on Sunday. It's the final day of MLB regular season action. So if you're watching your team's last game before the break, you might miss the futures game, but there's less potential for overlap there and much easier to cover because you fly in, you do, Saturday night, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and you're out of there. Now the futures game is Saturday. There are 2 games left in the final 3-game series of the first half of the regular season. Odds are pretty high you're not watching the futures game over your team on a Saturday afternoon. Then you've got that blank Sunday with the draft in the evening, no all-star events, then back after it on Monday. It's much harder to plan for, and it's not the all-star game I grew up with. So I don't know. I understand you want to make the all-star, the first round part of all-star weekend and a prime time event, but it's never going to be the NBA draft or the NFL draft. It's for the heads. And so I don't really, I'm opposed, but hey, I see what you're doing, MLB. I get it, but not for me.
Yeah, I mean, at least they got rid of the 48 rounds. I mean, that's what they needed to do. Make it 20, but yeah, you're talking about drafting guys that are, not going to even contribute till probably even maybe a year from now. That if you're lucky, it's like the hockey draft. I mean, make it more of an event than if you're going to do anything, just have it at Vegas in the Sphere. Like the hockey draft was really cool on that. Well, let's wrap up the chat with Adam talking about the possibility of big names around the league being moved and what's it like to be a Yankees fan. I know people are like, I don't want to be a Yankees fan, but hey, relative to a large market club that can draft players to trade and actually sign elite talent, all the things that the Sox do not do. Let's talk about that next on Locked On White Sox. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into 1,000. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays to helping your lineup hit or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Also, PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states, and I've told you before, good buddy on my text chain from college as well. He lives behind the Cheddar Curtain, so he uses PrizePicks to get his entries in. It's so easy to use and such a simple concept. Let's see. Easy to use, available in most states, fun to play. What are you waiting for if you don't already have an account? Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And again, the White Sox play game 2 of a road series against the Cleveland Guardians tonight. First pitch is at 5:40 p.m. Central. Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And again, I got Adam Weinrib from the Baseball Insiders podcast and the editorial director of MLB, or MLB editorial director at FanSided. And Adam, other than Skubal, are we going to get any other names traded, big names traded at the deadline?
It's a great question. I know that we should. Right. I know that we should. But I do suspect that you're going to see Crochet leading the way. I think the caliber of prospect that changes hands is going to be stronger than the caliber of familiar major league name and familiar all-star. Although I will say we can no longer, the Houston Astros are off deadline watch. They're going to buy. They're not going to sell. And, we've been preaching that for months, but now it's obvious. They're 3 games out of the West as we record this. There's an outside chance that the Texas Rangers could entertain trading a veteran like Max Scherzer, but we were on the Baseball Insiders yesterday, and Robert was pinged by, again, we love our commenters. A commenter brought up Nathan Eovaldi as an option, and Robert was like, hadn't thought about that. Let me look into it. And we were all excited about that possibility. And very shortly thereafter, he got it initially refuted that, that's not someone the Rangers are looking to dabble in. So count them out for now. But again, could all change in a week. I want to give everybody you should be looking at the Tampa Bay Rays. And you should be looking at maybe some of the arbitration eligible Tampa Bay Rays or players with declinable player options. I got Robert's brain spinning on Brandon Lau yesterday. I put him on the rundown as a maybe forgotten or ignored trade candidate. And Robert was like, I don't think so. It doesn't make much sense. He doesn't hit over 220 anymore. And then I made the case and he was like, you know what? Team options for 25 and 26, probably last year on the Rays, regardless, still positive in the OPS plus department, versatile. Yeah. Okay. You know what? Maybe they should explore it. So I think a lot of people are talking about Arozarena, Jose Siri entering the conversation, Isaac Paredes, Yandy Diaz. I mean, some of this is just because other teams want to plunder the Rays' talented pieces. But Robert has mentioned Zach Eflin as another potential rotation option. I'm starting the Brandon Lau train. But I would look at the Rays roster. I think star power, Cody Bellinger, crosstown could be an option as the Cubs begin to sell off. And Bo Bichette likelier to go than Vlad Guerrero Jr. in Toronto, but still, if you took my temperature today, I would say the Jays are going to be looking to give away some of these rentals like Kikuchi, Trevor Richards, Chad Green, but not so much the core players like Bichette and Vladdy Jr. I guess if Kikuchi's available, he struggled a bit in June, but that's right behind Eric Fetty, in my opinion. That's like a fourth best option on the market.
So seriously, how is it to have your team, the New York Yankees, just go out and be like, yep, we're just going to go get Juan Soto and also be able to find Aaron Judge and draft a ton of players to trade for guys like Soto? Because, I'll admit this time around, now that the Steinbrenners are spending again, I'm a little jealous. Not going to lie, because the White Sox don't act like a big market team.
It's funny. I mean, this is not what you want to hear or any neutral fan wants to hear, but I feel like Yankee fans still don't think the Steinbrenners are acting like the Steinbrenners. You look at this lineup, and yes, they gave Aaron Judge the money he needed and deserved, and Hal Steinbrenner got that done when Brian Cashman maybe couldn't. They do go out and trade for Juan Soto, who you could not name a better fit. This team lacked power and left-handed hitting and outfielders, and they go, how about probably the best young power left-handed outfielder of this current generation. So very proud and happy that the Yankees managed to get those things done. Signing Garrett Cole, another example of can't not do that. Okay, good. They did that. You can still consider them the Yankees. But the back half of this lineup, I mean, whether it's something in the clubhouse, whether it's these players with talent not living up to their pedigree, or whether it's the front office saying that people love to criticize in New York, the Yankees front office for just saying, these guys will return to form. Gleyber Torres, DJ LeMahieu, Anthony Rizzo, they'll bounce back. We've seen it before. They'll bounce back rather than ensuring against the possibility that they don't bounce back. So right now, the back half of that Yankees lineup, a struggling Gleyber, DJ LeMahieu, Alex Verdugo back down around league average. The infield is not what it should be at this moment in time, unless Torres decides to rebound in the second half. I think you'll hear Yankees fans accuse this front, Hal Steinbrenner and company of going 65, 70% of the way there, half measures and struggling with depth. I do think the depth is an issue for this team. But that said, we all know we could have it worse. And we all know that it does usually result in a playoff berth, if not a championship. So spoiled, absolutely. But man, the 4 through 9 in this Yankees lineup right now is not exactly fearsome. And Juan Soto and Aaron Judge maybe deserve a little bit better.
I'm just going to say, whenever you think you have it bad, just think, I have it worse. And I talk about him every day and write about him every day. But how is Carlos Rodon doing in New York?
That's a weird one. I mean, he was brought in last year to be our number 2 starter behind Garrett Cole and sort of this fearsome bulldog competitor. And more often than not, it seemed like it was injury related. Last year, he had a forearm strain in spring training and then a back issue, and he was fighting through it and working his way back. The fastball velocity was there, but it was not the same pitch. The location didn't follow, way too middle. You'd have a lot of ambush first innings on Rodon last year in his limited time where, you'd look up at the scoreboard and it's 5-0, 1 out in the first. That it's part of the game, but it was happening far too often for him last year. Went into the lab this offseason, got healthy, made adjustments, relied on the cutter, changeup added to his arsenal in addition to the slider. Came out looking like a guy who had figured it out again. And I'd say early June, flirting with an all-star appearance, tamed the Royals on the road, looked like he got that ERA under 3. And then all of a sudden, Red Sox, Braves, Toronto. The Toronto game, he allowed 5 runs before recording an out. Fastball reliant, and the fastball's in all the wrong places. It's still got that velocity. It's still something that I know he's done this back to his White Sox days, worked up the velo from the early innings from, 93, 94 to 95, 96, all the way up to 98 at the end of the game. He can still do that. He's still a fierce competitor, but he has reverted back to his 2023 form, his past 3 starts. And he threw a little mini tantrum on the field the other day because Ben Rice, a rookie first baseman, let a ball roll fair rather than taking it to the bag. Next batter hit a 3-run home run off Rodon after that little outburst at Rice in, I think, his 9th career game. Rodon's passion is something I think all Yankee fans want to embrace him in full, and we did in May and the first half of June. And that, I think, showing up a rookie like that is something that can't happen. So we all I endorse Rodon. I'm behind him, but his time in New York has definitely been more checkered than I think we were hoping.
Yeah, and I hate when pitchers do that. Like if there's a mistake, just make the next pitch. You got to get on to the next pitch. Just one final question then. What do will the Yankees trade for any of the Sox players that are on the market? And what are some of the guys that they have to offer?
That's a great shout. I mean, the guys they have to offer, the list is decreased from even about a month and a half ago. I think Everson Pereira, sort of a consensus top 100-ish prospect. Baseball America was higher on him than MLB Pipeline. So depending on your resource, you might have lost track. But he was poised to be probably the biggest Yankees trade deadline chip, especially because the outfield is so crowded. Whether you believe in Jason Dominguez and Spencer Jones or not, they hope to sign Soto long-term. They have Judge out there. You could always make a free agent addition. They were running out of room for a Pereira type. He ended up on that secret minor league IL, the 7-day that means nothing. And it turned out he needed Tommy John. So if anyone's taking him on at this deadline, it'll be as a third or fourth piece when he might have been a second or a centerpiece. They've got pitching. They've got Will Warren. Chase Hampton was injured in spring training. Another top 100 guy. He is reportedly throwing live BP and will be back soon. The Yankees always have pitching depth. And I think they always believe they can reload their minor league pitching depth. You got Drew Thorpe for that reason. So I would say keep an eye on those Yankee pitchers. They believe in their lottery tickets like Roderick Arias and Brando Maia. I doubt they'd be willing to trade, those teenage prospects that still have not peaked yet. But keep an eye on the pitching depth. Pereira hopefully hasn't lost too much value, but he probably has lost too much value to be a centerpiece. As for a White Sox Yankees fit, I'm not sure I see it unless there's a bullpen piece, maybe a Tanner Banks, somebody that Matt Blake believes he can save. But last year, the two sides hooked up for the only Yankees deadline trade, Keenan and Middleton, even though the Yankees should have sold. If they were going to buy, should have bought more than Middleton, but they didn't, and that's where we sat. So who knows? Maybe the sides do rekindle talks, but feels like, if it does happen, it'd probably be maybe a 2-for-1 bullpen swing.
All right. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. But before I go, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. Free 24/7 sports streaming channel. Program for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll be back tomorrow. Just because it's 4th of July doesn't mean there isn't White Sox baseball to talk about. Adam, thank you for joining me again. Where can we find any of your content?
Check out the FanSided network of team-specific sites. Check out Todd's work at Southside Showdown. Baseball Insiders on YouTube and on all podcast platforms. If you want to hear more Yankees whining, the Yanks Go Yard podcast, also on YouTube and all podcast platforms. I'm at Adam Weinrib. The handle's down there. I am usually either synthesizing baseball rumors, making jokes, or complaining. So appreciate you following along.
Well, also feel free then to leave comments about today's show with Adam. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub, or Locked On Sox, or email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. And also to the audience, sorry, my daughter is home. She's running around. So if you've been hearing a bunch of booming on the ground, it's been my daughter running around. So otherwise, have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.